Welcome back to the channel of Laozhang Sees the World. On February 20th, Russia and Belarus announced to extend their joint military exercise. And on February 21st, the Russian President Putin organized the independence of the two breakaway regions of Donetsk and Luhansk from Ukraine and sent troops there for peacekeeping and special military operations, for which President Biden called it the beginning of Russian invasion and announced economic sanctions to Russia. Ukraine crisis and escalated, and people might wonder, is it war or not war? Before any clear answer, let's see the video clip of related news and examine Ukraine crisis, its origin and development.
Movement on the diplomatic front, Russia and Belarus have decided to extend military drills that were supposed to end on Sunday.
To the United States, it's a sign that, but the U.S. is skeptical. Secretary of State Antony Blinken maintains that Russia is on the verge of invading Ukraine.
Vladimir Putin edging ever closer to a potential full-blown invasion of Ukraine, ordering Russian forces into two regions in the eastern part of the country already controlled by Russian supporters as independent from Ukraine, and denouncing Ukraine as a puppet of the West in a fiery speech to the Russian people, saying Ukraine has never had its own authentic statehood. There has never been a sustainable statehood in Ukraine. Immediately after the speech, what appeared to be a pre-planned display of fireworks in one of those regions, arranged by the breakaway regions within Ukraine, already embroiled in a long-running battle for control between Moscow and Kyiv, may now become a launching pad for the Russian military to invade deeper into the country. A possible invasion looms.
We know both Ukrainians and Russians belong to East Slavs and are both joined the former Soviet Union. In history, they witnessed unity and division, love and hate. Until today, they see face to face on the battlefield and fight each other like between two brothers. How did it come this way? Ukraine lies in Eastern Europe with a population of 44 million. Kiev as its capital. Its size is 600,000 square kilometers. The second largest country in Europe after Russia, with its length of 1,300 kilos from the east to the west, and with the width of 900 kilos from the south to the north. And its east side is Russia, and to the north is Belarus, to the west is Poland, Slovakia, and Hungary. And to the south is Moldova and Romania, the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. The position of Ukraine is very specific and strategic, like a cross, with its west side to European Union, Western countries, and Catholics, and with the east side to Commonwealth of Independent States, the geopolitics of Russia, and Orthodoxy. The meaning of the word of Ukraine is a border or a country. So Ukrainians means the people who live at the borders. From 4,500 BC to 3,000 BC, there were people who lived at this area, and 6th century BC, the ancient Greeks built colonies around the Black Sea. The people of Goths and Huns lived here from the 2nd century to the 5th century. And after 6th century, the Slavs gathered here and developed three branches: Western Slavs to Poland, Yugoslavia to the south of the Balkan Peninsula, and the Eastern Slavs in current Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. In the following 2 centuries, and there were lasting strifes among the Eastern Slav tribes, and they finally decided to invite a great leader from Vikings, and the people lived at Scandinavian North Europe. The word of the Vikings means the people who out of the sea gods. The Vikings have been long regarded as a pirate and savages. But they were very good at building and ships, and sea navigation, and also doing business. In 862, they centered at Kiev, the current capital of Ukraine, and with the help of Vikings. The first national country of Kiev Rus was established, which was the first common motherland and a sister for Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. Kiev Rus accepted Orthodox and was once very strong with its Rurik dynasty, lasted from over 800 years until the year of 1598. After the rise of Mongol Empire, Ukraine and Russia were under the control of one of the kingdom of Golden Horde. From the capture of Kiev in 1240 to its decline in 1480, totally 240 years. After then, the Grand Duchy of Moscow rose and became Tsarist Russia in 1547. Meanwhile, Ukraine was taken over by Kingdom Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, and the influence of Catholic Church. In 1654, the Cossack in eastern Ukraine took up risings and joined Russia 3 years later. In memory of the 300-year anniversary of reunification of Ukraine and Russia, the Soviet leader Khrushchev decided to give Russia's Crimea to Ukraine as a gift. And this is why in 2014, after breakup of Ukraine and Russia, the Putin sent troops to take it back. In 18th century, the Russia's Catherine the Great took over West Ukraine and Belarus into her empire. In 1793, the Russia defeated Ottoman Turkey and retained Crimean Peninsula. During First World War, Ukraine got independent for a short time, and in 1922, Ukraine joined the Soviet Union as a republic. In 1931 to 1934, due to natural disaster and mismanagement of collective farms, the famines happened in Ukraine, and it was said about 3 million people starved, which greatly worsened the relations between the Ukrainians and the Russians. During a Second World War, Ukraine was occupied by Nazi Germany and freed in November 1943 by Red Army, and the Western Ukraine and Poland combined. Later became one of the first members of the United Nations. Ukraine had a very developed agriculture and established heavy industry and military industry in the time of the Soviet Union. And in 1986 occurred a nuclear leak accident in Chernobyl. And Gorbachev reform and new thinking caused the great upheavals in Eastern Europe. And in 1991, Ukraine declared independence, and it ended up its 337 year of unification with Russia, and gradually began its de-Russianization and closer to European Union in economy and politics, hoping to join NATO in military and defense. Yet it became hostile to Russia. In 2004 and 2005, Ukraine broke out Orange Revolution, protesting there might be bribe and fraud in presidential election. In 2010, Yanukovych was elected as president. In 2013, Yanukovych delayed the approval of Ukrainian integration with European Union and brought a large scale of protest parade from the pro-Western forces, and he was ousted by the parliament and fled to Russia and asked Putin to send troops to Crimea. In eastern Ukraine, most people identify themselves as Russian and against Ukrainian government policy on de-Russianization and too close to the West. They formed anti-government militant organizations and announced independence in the states of Donetsk and Luhansk. Ukraine government sent troops to crack down, and Russia sent troops for backup. So wars lasted there for 8 years, with 1,400 casualties and millions evacuated. On February 21st, Putin recognized the independence of the two regions, that enforced troops for peacekeeping, and began special military operations. The current Ukrainian president is Zelensky, 44 years old. Being elected in 2019, Zelensky was born in a Jew family in Eastern Europe, Ukraine. His father hoped he could study economy and became a lawyer. Zelensky's most favorite is performance on stage. He's a famous TV actor, comedian, and good for making shows and very serious in making jokes. Without any political experiences nor talented political team, many of his cabinet members came from the performance and the entertainment circle. In the first week of his inauguration, more than 70,000 people joined to ask for his stepping down. Zelensky kept on the policy of Ukraine membership in NATO and hoped to talk with Russia to take it back Crimea, which seems some missions impossible. His behaviors home and abroad have been more likely performances and shows on stage than proper policies in dealing with crisis. And an actor in comedy might lead the country to a tragedy. His support and approval rate plummeted from initial 73% to 25% right now. We know Eastern Europe has been long Russia's sphere of influences, the buffer zone between Russia and the West. NATO's eastward expansion disregards Russia's geopolitics and national interests, squeezing Russia's living space. Putting one side of America and Europe, what's your purpose for NATO's eastward expansion? To regard Russia as an enemy. Ukraine listed the policy of joining NATO in its constitution, which is viewed as a red line and a personal humiliation to Putin and a national humiliation to Russia, resulting in Russia's Belarus joint military exercise and Putin's retaliation with military operations. In comparison in military power, Ukraine is totally not at the same level with Russia. It is completely overwhelmed. Like Ukraine's everything is nothing to Russia. Biden administration called Putin's enforcement in East Ukraine as the beginning of a Russian invasion and began sanctions. But Washington also made the policy clear that even if Russia invaded Ukraine, American government would not send troops to fight with Russia, but only with military assistance to Ukraine for guerrilla warfare. Ukrainian people should remember the lessons of Iraq and Afghanistan and avoid its country being dragged into lasting clashes and wars. The best policy for Ukraine to keep neutrality, maintaining good relations with both Russia and with the West. Today, Ukraine's issue of to war or not to war will be is tomorrow's to be or not to be. For this, hopefully the actor President Zelensky should keep his mind clear, and every one of us will keep closer eyes on the issue and its further development. And thank you all, and see you next time.